Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate Day number 1201, 1201, July the 25th, 2020, Saturday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today is a very important day in TowerGate. Maybe one of the most important TowerGate videos I've ever done. And I say that because today I'm going to go on the record that I believe that I have found and confirmed the missing link that I've been looking for a very, very long time that ties the Rotten Reverend directly to the coup plot. This based on the recent discovery of Chuck Ross and the transcripts from the court hearings, the deposition from the court hearings in the case in the UK between Mr. Gubarev, owner of Webzilla, and Christopher Steele, where Christopher Steele outlines in his deposition, and the attorneys for Mr. Gubarev, good enough to inform us all of exactly what that relationship was between Strobe Talbot and Christopher Steele. Much, much more intimate than we thought. As most of you know, since the very beginning of TowerGate, many of you have been with me for a very long time. Some of you have been with me since almost the very beginning. In the very first week of doing TowerGate videos, many, many videos ago, I said that this smelled like a Clinton operation. My gut told me that. And I'm old enough to remember the Clintons the first time around, when Bill Clinton was president in the early 90s. 92. And so I know how the Clintons operate. The Clintons always get involved in a lot of criminal activities, but they never actually get their fingers dirty themselves. They get other people to commit the crimes for them. They separate themselves with multiple layers of intermediaries, people who take the fall for them, while the Clintons leave themselves plausible deniability, acting as if they knew nothing about nothing. Devin Nunes was recently on 2 different Fox programs where he talked about the fact that he thinks it's time to investigate the liberal think tank's role in spreading the dossier. Devin Nunes didn't say by name the think tank he's referring to, but it's the Brookings Institution. And he didn't say the person he wanted to investigate. That person is Strobe Talbot. I knew for a very, very long time that there had to be some real direct link, what I would refer to as a missing link, that we've had for a long time, that I've been digging and digging and digging to find now for going on over 1,000 videos. I've been digging to try to find, because I knew it was there somewhere. Now, we knew about Michael Sussman, the Rotten Reverend's lawyer, hand-delivering a thumb drive and information to General Counsel James Baker of the FBI, Comey's lawyer at the FBI, delivering to him information that was false, of course, the stuff about Trump Tower server communicating with Alpha Bank. That came from Sussman. Sussman also is the one who gave that information to Christopher Steele in a meeting where there was a meeting with Perkins Coie, Fusion GPS, and Christopher Steele. It was at that meeting that Sussman gave that information to Steele, who went back to the UK and put that in his dossier memo and sent it to the FBI. Of course, the FBI debunked this very early on. There's also another source that we heard about at that time, a woman professor from Indiana University who has a small IT firm on the side, and she too apparently found this fake story, this fake information about Trump Tower server communicating with Alpha Bank, and she forwarded that information to Ohio Congresswoman Marcy Kaptur. 3 fake stories coming from 3 different places, all talking about the same fake story, knocked down and debunked by the FBI. There was a lot of collusion going on back in 2016, wasn't there? So I have never asked, as many of you watch my videos, you know this, I've never asked people to thumbs up my videos, give me likes, donate money, share, or anything else. I'm going to make an exception on this video. This may be one of the most important videos I've done in all of my TowerGate videos. If you are on a social media platform that Devin Nunes is on, I would appreciate if you would share the link to this video with Devin Nunes. He wants to investigate more about the Brookings Institution and Strobe Talbot. Well, I've taken care of that. And that's just what I could find out through open source research in about 24 hours. I'm sure Nunes's investigators over there on the House Intelligence Committee could do much more. But just so I would like him to get this information, and I'm not on these social media sites, that's why I'm asking all of you to share this link with Devin Nunes for this video so he can watch it. Because there's some facts I'm going to reveal here that I know he doesn't know, and that his investigators in the House Intelligence Committee need to look into. Because I'm telling you, I have reached the conclusion, based on the evidence I have found, that Strobe Talbot was the missing link. Through the entire TowerGate story, I've always known that the Right Reverend Clinton was the mastermind behind the plot. And I knew about Sussman, and I knew about Weiner pumping it through the State Department into Steele and to Newland. I knew about Sussman pumping the stuff in. I knew about Shearer and going over to the State Department and walking around in the State Department. I knew about Steele going over to the State Department. I knew about Confusion GPS pumping it out to the media. I knew about Robbie Mook going on TV and talking about it to the media. I knew about all these various pipelines that the Right Reverend Clinton's crew was pumping this garbage Trump-Russia hoax disinformation into. But I always knew there had to be something more. And what we've all been trying to find out is who put Halper, Mifsud, and Downer into the game. Many of us have believed at some point we'd find FBI or CIA involved, but at this point we have not found the FBI or CIA was involved. Maybe they were, and we just haven't found that evidence yet. But we cannot find any ties either, really. But with Strobe Talbot, that all changes. That's where I think we found the missing link. It sounds almost like Steele, like Talbot was Steele's handler. And that may have been kept even away from Perkins Coie and from Confusion GPS. Remember, Talbot is not just someone the Clintons know. He's a very close personal friend, a very intimate relationship between the Clintons and Talbot. They all go way back together. They're the most trusted confidants. There would be nobody between the Clintons and Talbot. No intermediaries. They would talk personally, directly. So if you would, share this video with Devin Nunes on one of his social media platforms. I think it's important. Let's go through some facts for Mr. Nunes that his team might want to look into. Some of this we all know, and some of this is going to be new information. Strobe Talbot served as the president of Brookings Institution throughout the period of 2016 and 2017. He was there throughout the whole period of 2016 and most of 2017, leaving toward the end of the year in 2017. I believe he was appointed to that post or became president of Brookings back in the early 2000s. So he had been there for quite a while. Talbot contacted Christopher Steele in August of 2016, offering to help Christopher Steele with his investigation into the Trump campaign's possible ties to Russia, according to Mr. Gubarev's lawyers. This coming to us from Chuck Ross. Talbot telephoned Steele out of the blue in 2016, August, having heard about Steele's work, and Talbot offered advice if needed. First of all, nothing happens out of the blue. Next, how did Talbot know about Steele's work in August of 2016? He didn't even deliver his first memo to the FBI till July 20th. I mean, this was relatively a secret operation. Steele knew, Fusion GPS knew, Perkins Coie knew, and the top tier of the Clinton campaign knew. But not many other people knew at that time that Steele was doing this dossier work for the Rotten Reverend. But somehow, Talbot knows, and very early on, August 2016, he's prepared to help Christopher Steele cultivate information about Trump and his ties to Russia. Who told Talbot about Steele? Where did the information come from that Talbot had that he wanted to provide to Steele? Why was Talbot interested in helping Steele? Who put Talbot into the game? Talbot called Steele on November the 2nd or November the 3rd of 2016. That would have been just a few days before the election, asking for a copy of the dossier in order to discuss with John Kerry, John F. and Kerry, who, by the way, served in Vietnam, and other officials at the State Department. So Talbot calls Steele a few days before the election to discuss, and he wants a copy of the dossier from Steele so that he could discuss it with John Kerry and other officials at the State Department. Well, John Kerry already had a copy of the dossier because Newland had given Kerry a copy of the dossier that was given to Newland by Weiner, which came from Steele back, I believe, in September of 2016. So Kerry already saw the dossier. He was 2 months ahead of this. You would think that Steele would have known that Kerry eventually ended up with the dossier, which he passed on to the FBI, by the way. Steele to Newland to Kerry to the FBI. 2 months before Talbot is suggesting that he needs a copy so that he can go discuss it with Kerry and other officials at the State Department, Hillary's old stomping grounds. Talbot is a longtime ally of Bill and Hillary Clinton. He was Secretary of State under Bill Clinton and his administration. And as Secretary of State, the Right Reverend Clinton hired a board of advisors, or she created, I should say, a board of advisors and installed Talbot as the chairman. Keep in mind, the relationship between Talbot and the Clintons is not just, he's just another one of those people in Washington that they know. The relationship with Bill Clinton and Talbot goes back all the way to their college days. The Clintons are intimate friends with Talbot. He may be one of their very closest friends. There would be nobody acting as an intermediary between the Clintons and Talbot. They're very close friends. They would be communicating directly. There wouldn't be a middleman between the Clintons and Talbot. Just after Trump's election win, Steele sends a letter to Talbot and asks him for advice on how to handle the package. That would be the dossier. Here is the text from Steele to Talbot. Dear Strobe, I know this is not straightforward, but we need to discuss the package we delivered to you the other week, and sooner the better. What you thought of it, what you did with it, how we both should handle it, and the issue it highlights going forward, etc. November 12th, 2016, a week after the election. Why is Christopher Steele? I mean, he's not calling Glenn Simpson. That's supposedly his boss. That's supposedly who he's working for. He's not calling Perkins Coie and Sussman or Elias. Probably doesn't have Hillary's number. But he's got something just as good. And that's Hillary's most trusted confidant. Even more trusted of a close friend and confidant than Blumenthal. There's probably not that many people closer to the Clintons than Talbot. It appears that Talbot was acting as Steele's handler He's going over Simpson's head here. And look at the questions he's asking. What do I do now with the dossier? That's a command decision. Hillary is the owner, the proprietor of the dossier. She owns it. Steele's done with it. He's finished. He's saying, now what do I do with it? More importantly, what did you do with it? What are you going to do with it? What should we do with it? What should we do about it? These are the types of questions you ask a principal, a decision maker, or someone very close to the decision maker. Simpson can't answer these questions. Not even Perkins Coie can answer these questions. The only person who can answer these questions are the rotten Reverend Clinton, or a surrogate. And that, my friends, was Talbot. The missing link. Did you know, Mr. Nunes, that between June 21st and June 22nd of 2009, the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs hosted a consortium called the G8 and Beyond. It convened with the Brookings Institution, Aspen, Club de Madrid, and Link Campus. Link Campus. Joseph Mifsud, Strobe Talbot, Vincenzo Scotti were among the 35 names on the list of speakers at the conference. I've seen the official document, my friends. Official letterhead. It's like an invitation to attendees, potential attendees. The official letterhead from the Italian government's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The list of names of the attendees. The date that the event was going to go down, and what they were going to be addressing. Joseph Mifsud, Strobe Talbot, and Vincenzo Scotti. And remember, it was Vincenzo Scotti who introduced Papagalopoulos to Joseph Mifsud at Link University in 2016. Jonathan Weiner worked under Strobe Talbot from 1994 to 1999 at the State Department. Weiner claimed in 2018 that he did not know that Cody Shearer was Talbot's brother-in-law. Do you believe that? Bill Clinton and Strobe Talbot met at Oxford while both were attending college there in the late 60s. Stefan Halper was attending Oxford at that time. He was once asked in a magazine interview if he ever knew Bill Clinton while they were back at Oxford in the late 60s. And he said, oh yeah. Yeah, I knew Bill Clinton back in Oxford. The fat man, Stefan Halper. So if he knew Bill Clinton back at Oxford in the late 60s, he might have known Talbot as well. But guess who else was back in Oxford in the late 1960s who also knew Bill Clinton? Alexander Down the Hatch Downer. Down the Hatch Downer. So here we have the three key players who we've not been able to figure out who put them into the game. Mifsud, Downer, and Halper. We're not really sure at this point. We have no evidence, hard evidence, who put them into the game. We've been asking that for a long time. But we now know that Bill Clinton, Strobe Talbot, Stefan Halper, and Down the Hatch Downer all were attendees at Oxford between 1967 and 1971, and most of them having already admitted that they knew each other. Certainly Talbot and Clinton knew each other at Oxford. Halper saying he knew who Bill Clinton was, or knew Clinton at Oxford, and we know that Downer has discussed knowing Clinton at Oxford. I believe we now have a direct connection to these three people. We want to know who put Mifsud, Downer, and Halper into the game? Well, they know the Clintons. I'm sure that's just a coincidence. Christopher Steele had an extensive relationship with Jonathan Weiner and Strobe Talbot. Talbot described his relationship with Christopher Steele as professional. A long relationship with Christopher Steele, which he described as professional. So now we can add Jonathan Weiner to the mix of people who know Talbot and the Clintons. Some of you may recall that story written by Jane Myers, or is it Myers? I think it's Myers. It's Jane Myers. I remember the story quite well. In the New Yorker magazine, it was a story about Christopher Steele and what a great guy he is, what a crack CIA or MI6 spy he was. The whole article does nothing but embellish and build up the character and the credibility of Christopher Steele. That's what the article was meant to do. Someone write an article that makes Christopher Steele look really reputable, honest, smart, capable, credible, and all these things. That article was in the New Yorker at a very key time when a lot of people were questioning Christopher Steele. So then out comes the article, making him look like the golden boy of the spy world. Above, reproach. Can't question him. He's a former professional. MI6 at the Russia desk. He's worked with all these important people and governments, provided all this important information, worked in all these very important cases with the FBI, foreign governments. Oh, he's a heavy player. Highly credible. That was the story. Do you know who the source was for Jane Myers' story in the New Yorker about Christopher Steele? Strobe Talbot. Talbot is pictured at a conference on June the 27th of 2012. It was the P5 conference in Washington, D.C. Sitting next to Talbot is Robert Hannigan of GCHQ. Hannigan of GCHQ. You know, the folks who were spying on the Trump Tower. According to Luke Harding in The Guardian. Luke Harding in The Guardian said that, yeah, Hannigan was, the U.S. couldn't spy on Trump Tower, so they asked GCHQ to do it, Robert Hannigan. And he was more than happy to do so. In 2018, Strobe Talbot was following Eric Holder, Sally Yates, and James Comey on Facebook. In 1995, George Soros is on the Charlie Rose Show. And he tells Charlie Rose that he is working with Strobe Talbot on European policy with emphasis on Russia. Talbot attended Yale. We don't know if he's skull and bones or not, but we do know that he's third cousin to George W. Bush, who is skull and bones, like his daddy and his daddy's daddy. All Yale, all skull and bones, just like Strobe Talbot. Talbot was working with Mark Malloch Brown to stop Brexit. Now, Talbot is working with Mark Malloch Brown to try and overturn Brexit. I don't see it happening. Talbot left his position at the State Department immediately after Trump's inauguration. And as I said before, the relationship between Strobe Talbot and the Clintons is very intimate. Probably in their top 5, maybe top 3 closest friends, longtime friends and allies. Very intimate friendship between the Clintons and Talbot. There would not have been an intermediary between the Clintons and Talbot. Their communications would have been direct. I am confident that Strobe Talbot was the missing link. He's the person I've been trying to find for nearly 3 years. I think he was handling the irregular part of the Clinton plot. There's nothing illegal about the Right Reverend Clinton hiring a law firm to hire a company like Fusion GPS who does smear campaigns, who then hires Christopher Steele. There's no law being broken there as far as I know. And the Clintons would know because they walk a very, very fine line on the law. They walk right on the very line. What they did and what they do and what they've always done is highly unethical. But they generally know the difference between legal and illegal. And they rarely cross that line, or they themselves do not commit the illegal activity. They have surrogates who commit the crimes for them. And the Clintons always leave themselves plausible deniability. That's why they always wiggle off the hook. If you look at how this whole thing played out beginning in the late spring of 2016, that's when these players like Mifsud and Halper and Downer are in the game. And up to this point, we haven't been able to find, as hard as we have looked, for some evidence that the Crossfire Hurricane team was behind putting them into the game, or the CIA was putting them into the game, or British intelligence or Italian intelligence were putting them into the game. We found no evidence of that. But they were definitely in the game. Talbot's connected to all of them, right along with the Clintons. Talbot and the Clintons connected to Mifsud, Downer, Halper, Weiner. All key players. And laying the initial groundwork. The breadcrumbs. See, the spring of 2016, the activities of these individuals was the planting, the spreading, the throwing down of the breadcrumbs. So that the FBI could then be motivated to come along and pick up the breadcrumbs and follow the trail. These guys were laying the breadcrumbs in the spring of 2016 so the FBI could be put into action in the summer of 2016 to pick up the breadcrumbs. All that was supposed to culminate together for the big October surprise. The release of the dossier and 1 million media reports to embellish it, back it up, push it, promote it, whatever you want to call it. That was going to be the October surprise. It was going to bring Hillary her victory and send Trump down into crushing defeat, and then set him up for a lifetime of investigations as a private citizen for having the audacity to challenge the Right Reverend Clinton's power. But it didn't work out, did it? But Hillary never stopped. After she lost, as Christopher Steele said in his deposition, he was hired to cultivate evidence, produce evidence that could be used by the Clinton campaign to challenge the election results if she lost. But the political dirty trick, the Mifsud, Halper, Downer, who we've never been able to find out who put them in the game, but they're all very closely connected to the Clintons and Talbot. And it's looking more and more like it was Talbot. It's almost like Hillary had two tracks. She had the legal track that, if discovered, she didn't want to discover, but if discovered, would not be that much of a problem because she'd get media cover. That meaning she used Perkins Coie, who used Confusion GPS, who used Christopher Steele as the salesman to sell the dossier, which Steele did not write or create. He was disseminating it. He was selling it. He was trying to give it the credibility, but he didn't write the damn dossier. That was Hillary's goon squad. Probably Shearer and Blumenthal and Talbot and some of his friends over there at Brookings Institution, along with Confusion GPS, Nellie Orr, and Glenn Simpson. That's basically the authors of the dossier. Steele did nothing more than do some copy and pasting, turn it around. He essentially was laundering intelligence, and then they used him as a salesman. They tried to sell it to the media back in the summer of 2016. They wouldn't buy it. That was when it was all in proto-dossier form, being pushed by Simpson. So they had to repackage it and find a new salesman. And that became Christopher Steele. That's all the stuff that we know about going on one track. But what's going on the other track, and this is all the picking up of breadcrumbs here. The picking up and assimilating breadcrumbs, writing the stories, creating the memos, creating the dossiers and all that, disseminating the dossier, disseminating all that. But the planting of the breadcrumbs, the planting of the evidence was occurring earlier in the early to mid to late spring period prior to summer. It was all the breadcrumbs were being thrown down. And that was all being done by someone else. And that involved Mifsud, Halper, and Downer. And it appears that they were working for somebody, and the beneficiary of their work would have been the rotten Reverend Clinton. She wasn't handling them herself. There was no evidence that the FBI or CIA was handling them back in the spring. Not yet. Maybe, but we don't have that evidence yet. There's no evidence that Fusion GPS or Perkins Coie were running Mifsud, Halper, and Downer. So the only other person, and it certainly looks right at this point, who would have been Talbot. Talbot and the Clintons knew Mifsud, Halper, and Downer. It's likely they are the ones who brought those guys into the game to plant the evidence, throw down the breadcrumbs, so the FBI could come along and sweep them up later in the year, after all the stuff had been pipelined into the FBI via Steele, the State Department, Glenn Simpson, Hillary's goons, Mook, the media, and all their friends. They manufactured the evidence. They cultivated the evidence. They pipelined the evidence right to the FBI. All supposed to be a big October surprise that didn't work out. But like I say, the most important thing to me, having gone through this now for a very long time, over 1,200 videos now, knowing the very first week that this was a Clinton operation, but I never could find that person that connected it all together. Never could find him. But now, I am convinced it was Strobe Talbot and his friends over there at Brookings, who are very close friends of the people at Fusion GPS, Perkins Coie. It's all one big cabal. I think we have found the missing link, and I think it's Strobe Talbot. If I'm John Durham, I'm going to get the phone records of Strobe Talbot for 2016 and 2017. I think you'll learn a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. See you. Bye.